All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of Finance and Supply Chain in Focus. Today, we are talking about master planning tips and tricks that make a difference. What can we do? What should we be on the lookout for to make sure that our master planning is running at peak performance, at optimal levels, and that we're getting the information that we need? So a couple of things before we get started here again. If you've been here before, you know the usual routine. We're going to have a recording afterwards. If you want to come back and take a look at it, or if you happen to miss it and want to send it on to one of your colleagues, we're going to take some time for questions and comments at the end, and also throughout. Feel free to throw them in the chat. Brie will interrupt me and let me know if I'm missing anything. And then at the end, we're going to send out a feedback survey. We really do look at those and try to use that to help improve the content. And if there's anything else that you want to see during one of the next In Focus sessions, please let me know. We'll be happy to accommodate that. If this is your first time here, my name is Joe Tews. I'm a pre-sales architect here at Stoneridge Software. I have over 18 years in the Dynamics community. I started off on Dynamics GP, and then I went over to Microsoft where I was in support for 5 years working with Microsoft Dynamics AX. And then I did solution architecting for 5 years on the finance and supply chain management product. And I've been at Stoneridge now, actually coming up on 3 years. So the slide's a little bit out of date, but I'll fix that for the next time. But coming up on 3 years here at Stoneridge doing support and pre-sales. But without any further ado, let's dive right in and let's take a look at some master planning tips and tricks that can help make a difference. I'm going to spend some time in the slides just because there is so much to kind of cover, and I want to make sure that you have kind of that base, and then we'll dig into the product, and I'll show you a few places where some of the fine tuning can really make a difference for you. So before we get into the tips, let's just take a step back and ground ourselves in what is master planning. We all kind of know what it is. We've used it. We're, continually using it within our environments. But, at its core, what master planning is it's just a tool that allows companies to determine, as well as balance the future need for raw materials and capacity to help meet our company's goals. Now, that could be true raw materials, that could be production processes, that could be actually purchasing or planning production for those processes. When we run master planning, or when master planning runs throughout the night, it's going to assess a couple of different things. What raw materials and capacities are currently available, as well as what raw materials and capacities are required in order to complete production. This is production centered, but also just fulfillment in general. For example, what do we have to make, purchase, transfer, or set aside as safety stock so that we can complete production? And then finally, we're going to take all of that information and we're going to use it to calculate the requirements and to plan and generate these planned orders. These are kind of our foundation for, creating purchase orders, creating production orders. To kind of sum all of that up, master planning really just helps to automate the process of fulfilling supply for our upcoming demand. And it's really just that simple. We're taking a look at the demand that we have and how are we going to fulfill that with supply. So now that we've got ourselves grounded, let's take a look at some of the things that can really help make a difference as we're looking at master planning. And really beyond the need to have accurate sales and production data, it's your master data that's going to also be the key. If we've got, bad sales data, let's say we've got a sales order for 100 pieces, but we really only need 50, but we haven't gone in and updated that yet. Or if we have a sales order that has a due date or a ship date of, middle of July. It's May right now, middle of July. But the customer actually called and said, we don't need that till September, but we haven't updated the date in the system yet. MRP doesn't know then that we've made it that date change. And that's really a lot of keys that we're going to have to some of these. The other thing is, that's really on the demand side of things, but looking at the supply side of things as well, Are we is our supplier providing our raw material late? Have they changed the lead times on certain items? Are we running into supply chain constraints? That was a big thing a couple years ago, and it really hasn't gone away a whole lot, especially if you're in, technological manufacturing. You can't get RAM right now. What is the current lead time to get any of our raw materials in? And on the same side of things, if we're a production company, how long is it actually taking to produce the item? Have we updated our routes? Have we updated our true lead time for a particular item to be made? And can we actually fulfill the demand that is being created through sales orders in order to meet that? So we have to make sure that we're constantly keeping our sales, our production, our lead time data, all of that up to date. But then also, we have to look at some of the other master data settings within D365. So what about our coverage settings? Are we utilizing the right coverage settings? Do we have master plan settings that are kind of taking that, anything that's not covered in a coverage setting? Is that master plan setting really accurate? We talked about lead times. The other thing to note here too is calendars. Do we have our calendars up to date? In D365, you can set it for 5-10 years ahead. What happens in 5 or 10 years after you've forgotten about that calendar, and now all of a sudden your planned orders are generating really outrageous dates for your production? We should go look at the calendars first to make sure we haven't missed anything there. But the good news is there are some agents out there that can help reduce some of these errors and automate, for example, the new lead time information. So we've talked about the supplier communications agent, helping us get that get the communications out to our suppliers. There's some enhancements coming that are going to help to actually update the lead times. Then, if someone emails back and says that, hey, we're actually going to be about 5 days late on that, it can update that purchase order and then cascade those downstream impacts for us through the master planning run. So really, we want to make sure that, yes, we've got all of these settings in place, but are we also taking advantage of new technology that has come along to kind of help with some of this as well? And one thing I will say, I don't think I included a slide for that on the new technology line. If you are currently utilizing the original master planning, so the built-in master planning, and not planning optimization, that is another new technology that you can use to take advantage of all of the functionality and features that the new system offers to us. As of this release wave, any CTP issues that we had with planning optimization are now taken care of. So we can now fully look at a planning optimization system that is really feature for feature has parity with the existing system. So something to take a look at. Making sure that for performance issues and everything like that, we are actually on that planning optimization. All right. So with that, let's talk about coverage groups, because this is where I see a lot of issues come up. In my previous life as a support engineer, I've seen a lot of things come up when it comes to coverage groups. Coverage groups really contain or help to direct a lot of the key parameters that we need for master planning. You can do these on individual items, you can do it on groups of items, you can do it on coverage groups. There's a lot of different places where you can put them, and really where you put some of these parameters can actually override other areas. So if you look at the bottom here, we've got some inheritance. So if I were to go into an item itself and say that I want to update a particular parameter, that's going to override the coverage group, for example. So let's say that we have an item and it's planning things weird, and we've looked at our coverage group settings, and all of a sudden this one item is giving us issues. We may want to go look at the item specific settings for that coverage group, so that, or for the parameters that we're dealing with here, so that we can make sure that we're not overriding anything that we've set at the coverage group level. The other thing to think about too is the coverage codes. How are we grouping our replenishment together? Are we doing it manually? sometimes if master planning isn't actually running for a particular item, it may be because we have maybe mistakenly put the coverage code to manual, which means that the system's not going to suggest any planned purchase, transfer, or production orders for an item. Same thing with requirement versus period or min-max. Requirement is going to create a new order per requirement, whereas period might combine all of the orders for a particular period together into one order, basically looking at everything that we have from the beginning to the end of the period. And then, min-max, that's pretty self-explanatory. Are we hitting the minimum? Can we order up to the maximum and keep products that way? So a couple things to just keep in mind with coverage codes there. The other thing to keep in mind is something that I've seen a few times as well is the coverage time fence. So what is the coverage time fence? This is really, the number of days after today's date or when you do the master planning run, where supply and demand is included. That should actually say included. Anything beyond that is excluded from the planning run. Ignore that typo there. Anything included in that coverage time fence. You want to make sure that if you're shortening that coverage time fence, so the default, I think, typically when we set this up is about 100 days. I've seen companies go 365 or 720 just to make sure that they have enough, 1 to 2 years out, just to make sure they have enough coverage. But if you've got lead times that are greater than 100 days, you may not see that requirement come up because we're only looking 100 days into the future. And if that lead time is further out than 100 days, that's why you probably aren't seeing anything. So again, just something to keep in mind here is where you have that coverage fence, time fence set to, what your lead time is. Again, all coming back down to, we need to make sure that all of this information is accurate within our system. I saw a statistic one time, and I don't know how accurate it is, but a lot of times when we're looking at issues with master planning, 65% of the time it's data related, and only 5% of the time is it because the system actually is not calculating it correctly. So typically there's always something we can find that is giving us that issue. Again, I could just be making up numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw one time when I was looking that up. And one thing to note here as well, in planning optimization, it is time zone aware. So it will consider the time zone at the supply and demand sites that are defined in finance and supply chain. So how do we go about actually, checking our settings, making sure that planning master planning optimization are actually running correctly? And a lot of times what we want to do is really just start simple. You can create a new master plan. You can have all kinds of master plans defined within your system. There's different reasons that we may want to simulate different demands, so we can have that set up. But maybe we start with a simplified approach. Let's start with validation on a single item. Let's create one demand source and observe the system behavior, and then start incrementing in some additional complexity into that. And as we're doing all of this, we want to focus on that data accuracy. We want to make sure that our lead times are validated. We want to make sure that we have the proper configuration. And then hopefully we can catch everything ahead of time so that we're not having compounding errors. Because there are times one thing could lead to another thing, could lead to another thing, and then it just snowballs from there. And that's something we really want to avoid. So I think that's all I've got for slides on that one for now. Let's go take a look at the system, and I'll just show you a few different areas. Again, I could talk master planning for an entire day if you guys really wanted to. So feel free to contact Stoneridge if you want to have a little bit more in-depth look at your system to really dig into some of these settings. But let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of different settings that I think are important to keep in mind. So under master planning, let's go to the setup tab here. And the first thing I want to look at is just this master planning parameters. These are going to be all of the main parameters for our master planning. And these are going to define some of our defaults within here. What is our master plan going to be? What is the general coverage group going to be for anything that doesn't have a coverage group assigned to it? What is the today's date calendar? This is something that we have to keep an eye on to make sure that we actually have days opened up. So making sure that this is the correct calendar within here. I've had happened many times where I've updated a 24/7 calendar, but I forgot to update my production calendar, and that's why nothing happened. On the standard update tab, not really a whole lot within here. This is mostly just for different firming principles. And then on the planned orders tab, there's a few things within here for looking at different vendors and planned order types. But the other thing that I wanted to just point out on this, so beyond the master planning parameters themselves, on the plans themselves, you can actually set up a lot of different specifics on here as well. So another place to take a look, are we including different information within here? Are we specifying different time fences within here? Are we overriding all of the time fences? This is going to override both our item and our coverage group. So, if we are experiencing something where we change something on the item, maybe we need to come in here and just make sure that we're not overriding something on the master plan itself that's just taking control of everything above and beyond that. So a couple things to look for in there. But the one thing I really wanted to show you is on the setup tab, we have this item coverage form here. And this is going to show you actually every item that you have in the system and what the different groupings are. So what is the coverage group? So if you have a coverage group specified for that particular item, if you have you can take a look at what our storage dimension groups are and what our item groups are. But this just kind of gives you a full view. So you can come in here, you can filter down by your items, or you can just see, who might have a particular coverage group or something different that we need to just kind of keep an eye on. So we have that available here through this item coverage form. Beyond that, let's go take a look at the actual coverage groups themselves. So again, there's a lot of information that you can specify within here, and it's really going to change the way a lot of different things work. So for example, let's go look at my requirement or my rec coverage group here. Again, we talked about the coverage time fence. What is the amount of time that we're actually going to go out and look at different demand or different demand and the supply that we're going to use for that. That's something that is going to be a big key there. The forecast time fence, right now we've got a coverage time fence for 100 days. And if you think about it, forecast is really, what goes above and beyond that. Are we looking truly far enough out to get our forecast planning in as well? And you can see here, there's a lot of other time fences, our bomb explosion time fence, our capacity scheduling time fence. There's a lot of things in here that could have effects, but those are kind of the main ones that I've seen. But again, because there are so many settings, a lot of times we have to start slow and really kind of dig into making one change, running master planning, see how things go. Make another change, run master planning, see how things go. Let's just make sure that we're not compounding different issues as we're going through. Do we need to add safety margins to a lot of our receipts, our issues, our orders? When we're talking supply chain issues, we may want to add that safety margin within there. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to just kind of talk about here as well is let's go to our product information management and let's go take a look at one of our released products. So I've actually I've created a new product in here, this In Focus product. Let's just go take a look at that. So there's a couple different places where you can make changes to some of the default settings that are inherited from the coverage group. And that's all under this plan tab here. So the first thing I want to look at is this default order settings. These are going to be the default order settings, and they can be site specific. So if we don't have a site specified, this is just going to appear across all of our sites. But we have the ability within here to update our purchase lead time. So if this particular item that we are creating purchase orders for has a particular lead time, we want to make sure that we're keeping this up to date, because that's going to help us to ensure that we're not planning something to be produced tomorrow when it's going to take us 10 days to get the raw materials in. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on. The other thing here too is this working days. If we don't have working days specified within here, doesn't matter what the calendar says, it's just going to incorporate weekends or holidays or anything else like that. We also want to keep an eye on some of the purchase quantities. What is our minimum order quantity? So if we have something that's on a rec coverage group and we're just looking at, what is the current requirement for that item. But let's say we've ordered one, or we need one of an item, and all of a sudden we're getting an order for 5. Well, why is that? That's because our minimum order quantity is specifying that we have to have a minimum of 5. The one that's caught me off guard a couple times as well is the multiple tab here. Are we having to purchase this in multiples of 2 or multiples of 3? And I only have a requirement for 1. So there's a lot of different areas within here that are going to affect, some of the dates that's being given, some of the planned supply that's being given as well. The other thing that sometimes catches me too is this default order type, because you can set this on a per site level. So you can say that I want to produce this at site 1, but if a demand comes in at site 2, I actually want to just do a transfer, or I want to do a purchase order for this. You can specify that within here as well. So a couple other things to keep in mind. And then on the item coverage side, again, this is just going to be, changes to our item coverage. So what are we going to override from our default coverage group? So you can see here, our default coverage group is this rec coverage group. So everything that we had specified in the rec coverage group is going to transfer over to this item. But we can actually make some changes to that. We can say that, hey, we actually want to make sure that this is a transfer order, and we're pulling it from our main warehouse of 12. We want to override some of our coverage group settings. So instead of requirement for this one, we actually want to take a look at period. And what is our period? We want to look at the next 14 days from the day that master planning is run. Or maybe we don't want to update that. We want to keep it at requirement, but we want to change our coverage time fence for this item because we know we have a long lead time. So let's set this to 365 days. So there's a lot of different areas where things can get overridden, and you aren't going to necessarily know exactly where those are. So you have to kind of dig around a little bit, but this is kind of where you get that start at in order to kind of make those assessments yourself. I'm going to delete that because that's usually what happens to me is I forget to make those changes. I run master planning and I'm like, oh, why did it do it this way? And then finally, one last thing I wanted to leave you with is if you haven't already started to use net requirements, it is my personal favorite to find out, what is on the docket for this particular item. If I look at my net requirements here, and I've actually run it for my master plan, maybe I thought I did. Oh no, I ran it for my static plan. Sorry. You can see here after you run MRP, it's going to give you a very big overview of what we need to make these things happen. So you can see here, I've actually created a sales order for this in focus item. And because I don't have any lead time set up, now it's telling me that I don't need to order this until actually the day that it's required for me. If I were to go in and actually change the lead time on this, and let's do that here real quick. Let's go to my default order settings, and we'll make a change to this, and we'll say that this is actually 7 working days. We can save that, and if you rerun master planning, it's actually going to give us a different date. So again, because I haven't actually changed anything yet, you can see my requirement date here. And if I go through and I update master planning for this particular item, it might take a second here, but once that updates, you're going to see a different requirement date on here. And one other thing to notice here, I actually created a sales order for 2027, and you don't see it on here because my coverage time fence is only out 100 days. So it's not going to pull in that sales order because we don't have to worry about that until we are within 100 days of that time fence. So you can see some of the effects of how things are going to be run through the system here. All right, I got 5 minutes left, so I told you I would open it up for questions. Any questions or comments on anything that we've gone through today? If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to Stoneridge. I believe this is probably going to be a blog here pretty soon, so we'll make sure to get that up for you as well. But I just want to thank everyone for joining today. Hopefully you learned something, and tune in next month, and we'll dig into another topic. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.